At my wedding toast, my sister said, "You're not his first choice." Then my dad stood up and changed the story. The air was thick with the scent of roses and anticipation. My wedding day. The moment I dreamed of since I was a little girl, twirling in my mom's old sundress, imagining a day filled with love, laughter, and promises. I stood there, in my ivory gown, feeling like the center of the universe. My heart raced as I looked at my groom, Ethan, his warm brown eyes locked on mine, a soft smile tugging at his lips. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Hey, before we dive deeper into this story, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Drop a comment below with your city and country. I'd love to know where this tale is reaching you. The venue was a charming barn just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. Golden sunlight streamed through the wooden rafters, casting a warm glow over the long tables adorned with wildflowers and flickering candles. The crowd was buzzing. Friends, family, co-workers, all gathered to celebrate us. My parents, Ellen and Tom, sat at the head table, beaming with pride. Ethan's mom, Susan, was there too, her sharp eyes scanning the room like she was keeping score. My sister Claire was at my side, my maid of honor, her smile tight but present. It was the kind of day you'd see on a Pinterest board. Laughter floated over the clink of champagne glasses. The band played soft acoustic covers, and kids ran around chasing fireflies as the sun dipped low. I felt like I was floating, my hand resting in Ethan's, his thumb brushing against my knuckles. But beneath the surface, there was a current, a subtle electric hum of tension I couldn't quite place. Let me take you back a bit. I'm Mia, 29 years old, a graphic designer who'd spent the last 2 years planning this day with Ethan, my high school sweetheart. We'd met at 16, in a crowded hallway at West Ashley High. He was the quiet guy who always had a sketchbook, doodling comics in the margins. I was the girl who noticed him, who saw the way his eyes lit up when he talked about art. We'd been through it all: college, long distance, late-night calls, and those moments where you wonder if love is enough. But we made it. We were here, vowing forever. Ethan's family was small but close-knit. His mom, Susan, was a retired nurse with a sharp tongue and a knack for saying exactly what she thought. His younger brother, Jake, was the best man, all charm and easy grins. My family, though, was a bit more complicated. My dad, Tom, was the rock, quiet, steady, always there with a bad dad joke to lighten the mood. My mom, Ellen, was the planner, the one who'd spent months obsessing over table settings. And then there was Claire, my older sister by 2 years. Beautiful, confident, always the center of attention. We'd been close growing up, but lately something had shifted. Her jokes felt sharper, her smiles less warm. I brushed it off as stress. Planning a wedding will do that, right? The guest list was a mix of our worlds. My best friend Lauren was there, whispering about how she'd caught Jake flirting with one of the bridesmaids. Ethan's old college buddy, Ryan, was telling stories about their late-night gaming sessions. Everyone was in high spirits, or so it seemed. But I noticed little things. Susan's clipped tone when she spoke to my mom. Claire's quick glances at Ethan, her lips pursed like she was holding back words. I told myself I was imagining it. Weddings make everyone a little on edge, don't they? As the evening rolled on, the speeches began. Jake went first, his toast a mix of humor and heart, poking fun at Ethan's terrible cooking while praising his loyalty. The crowd laughed, glasses raised. My dad was next, his voice steady but emotional, talking about how proud he was of me, his little girl. I teared up, squeezing Ethan's hand. Everything felt right. Then it was Claire's turn. She stood, smoothing her emerald green dress, her smile bright but her eyes sharp. She held the microphone like it was a weapon, and the room quieted. I felt a knot in my stomach, though I couldn't say why. "Thank you all for being here," Claire began, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. "Mia and Ethan, what a journey, right? I mean, we all know how hard it is to find the one." She paused, her gaze flicking to Ethan, then back to me. The crowd chuckled, but I felt Ethan's hand tense in mine. "I just want to say, Mia, you've always been the dreamer, the one who believed in fairy tales. And Ethan, well, you're lucky to have her. Because let's be honest, not everyone gets their first choice, do they? The room froze. Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. I felt my face flush, my heart pounding in my chest. Not his first choice? What did that even mean? I looked at Ethan, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the table. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, a few awkward coughs breaking the silence. Claire's smile didn't waver, but her eyes gleamed with something I couldn't read. Satisfaction? Regret? I wanted to speak, to laugh it off, to say something, anything, to break the tension. But before I could, my dad stood up. His chair scraped against the wooden floor, loud in the quiet room. Every head turned. Tom, my quiet, steady dad who never made a scene, was standing tall, his face unreadable, but his eyes burning with something fierce. The silence in the barn was deafening. My dad stood there, his broad shoulders squared, his usually gentle eyes locked on Claire. The room felt like it was holding its breath, every guest frozen, waiting for what would come next. I could still hear Claire's words echoing in my mind. Not everyone gets their first choice. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Ethan's hand was still in mine, but it felt stiff, like he was bracing for something. I glanced at him, searching for an answer in his face, but his eyes were fixed on the table, his jaw clenched tight. Claire lowered the microphone slowly, her smile faltering just a fraction. She looked at Dad, then back at me, like she was daring someone to challenge her. The crowd murmured softly, a ripple of whispers spreading like wildfire. I caught snippets. What did she mean? Is she serious? And my face burned. This was my day, my moment, and now it felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. Susan, Ethan's mom, leaned forward in her seat, her lips pursed so tightly they were almost white. My mom, Ellen, sat rigid, her hands clasped in her lap, her eyes darting between Claire and me. I could tell she was trying to keep it together, but her knuckles were pale from gripping her napkin. Lauren, my best friend, caught my eye from across the table, her wide eyes screaming, "What is happening?" I wanted to stand up, to say something, to laugh it off and pretend Claire's words were just a bad joke. But my throat felt tight, like I couldn't get air. Before I could find my voice, Claire raised the microphone again, her tone light but edged with something sharp. "Oh, come on, you all know I'm just teasing," she said, her laugh too bright, too forced. Mia's always been the lucky one, right? Snagging Ethan like that. The crowd chuckled nervously, but it didn't feel right. The laughter was thin, like everyone knew there was more to it. I looked at Ethan again, hoping he'd say something, anything, to shut this down. But he was still staring at the table, his fingers twitching against mine. Why wasn't he defending me? Defending us? My stomach twisted, and for the first time that day, doubt crept in like a cold draft. Then I heard Susan clear her throat. She stood, her chair scraping softly, and every head turned her way. Her face was calm, but her eyes were like daggers, aimed straight at Claire. "That was quite a toast," she said, her voice low and deliberate. "But maybe we should focus on celebrating Mia and Ethan, not stirring up trouble." Her words were polite, but they cut through the room like a blade. A few guests nodded, and I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe this could be salvaged. But Claire wasn't done. She tilted her head, her smile curling into something almost defiant. "Oh, Susan, I'm just being honest," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We all know Ethan's had his moments, right? I mean, Mia deserves to know everything about the man she's marrying." The room gasped. It was soft, but I felt it like a punch. My heart sank deeper, and I turned to Ethan, my voice barely a whisper. "What is she talking about?" He didn't answer, just shook his head slightly, his eyes still avoiding mine. My chest tightened. Was there something he hadn't told me? Something Claire knew that I didn't? Before I could press him, Jake, Ethan's brother, stood up, his easy grin gone. "Claire, maybe you've had enough champagne," he said, his tone light but with an edge that made people shift in their seats. A few laughed, but it was tense, like they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. Claire's eyes flashed. "Oh, Jake, don't act like you don't know," she said, her voice sharp now. "You were there. You all know." She gestured vaguely at the head table, and I felt my world tilt. "No, what?" My mind raced, replaying every moment with Ethan, every conversation, every late-night confession. Had I missed something? Was there a secret hiding in plain sight? The whispers grew louder now, a hum of confusion and curiosity. I caught Lauren's eye again, and she mouthed, "What the hell?" I shook my head, helpless. My mom reached for my hand under the table, her grip tight, but her face was pale, like she was bracing for impact. And then there was Dad. He hadn't sat down. He stood there, silent, his hands resting on the back of his chair, his eyes never leaving Claire. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on words he hadn't yet spoken. I'd never seen him like this. My quiet, steady dad, who always knew how to fix things, looked like he was about to explode. The band had stopped playing. The kids chasing fireflies were nowhere to be seen. The whole room was a pressure cooker, and Claire was turning up the heat. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, the microphone amplifying every word. "Mia, sweetie, I just want you to know the truth. Ethan didn't always want you." The words hit me like a slap. My breath caught, and I felt Ethan's hand slip from mine. I looked at him, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. "Ethan?" I whispered, my voice breaking. He finally met my eyes, and for a split second I saw something. Guilt? Fear? I couldn't tell. Before he could answer, Dad's voice boomed across the room. "Enough!" It wasn't loud, but it was final, like a gavel coming down. Every head snapped toward him. Claire froze, the microphone still in her hand, her bravado flickering. The barn was a vacuum, the air sucked out by my dad's single word. Enough. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that silenced every whisper, every rustle of fabric, every clink of a glass. All eyes were on him now, including mine. My heart was hammering, my palms sweaty against the lace of my dress. Ethan's hand was no longer in mine, and the absence felt like a chasm. Claire stood frozen, the microphone still raised to her lips, her confident smirk fading into something uncertain. Dad took a step forward, his movements slow but deliberate, like a man who'd been holding something back for too long. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Claire," he said, his voice steady but laced with steel, "you've said enough. Now it's my turn." The crowd leaned in, the tension so thick it felt like the room might crack. I glanced at Ethan, desperate for a clue, but his face was a mask, pale, unreadable, his eyes fixed on my dad. Susan, Ethan's mom, sat rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. My mom reached for my arm, her touch grounding me, but her eyes were wide with worry. Lauren was half out of her seat, like she was ready to jump in and stop whatever was coming, but no one could stop this now. Dad took the microphone from Claire's hand. She didn't resist, just let it slip from her fingers, her expression a mix of defiance and unease. He held it for a moment, looking out at the sea of faces, friends, family, strangers, all waiting for what he'd say. Then he turned to me, his eyes softening just a fraction. "Mia," he said, "this is your day, and I'm not going to let anyone ruin it." My throat tightened, tears stinging my eyes. I wanted to believe him, to trust that he could fix this, but Claire's words were still clawing at me. Not his first choice. What did she know? What was she trying to do? Dad turned back to the crowd, his voice steady but rising with emotion. "Claire seems to think she's got some big truth to share. Some secret that's going to change everything. Well, let's talk about the truth." He paused, letting the words settle, and I swear you could hear a pin drop. "The truth is, Claire's been carrying a grudge for years, and tonight she decided to make it everyone's problem." A murmur rippled through the room. Claire's face flushed red, her lips parting like she wanted to interrupt, but Dad didn't give her the chance. "You want to talk about choices, Claire?" He continued, his voice sharp now. "Let's talk about the choice you made 2 years ago. the choice to try and come between Mia and Ethan. The room gasped, a collective intake of breath that made my head spin. I looked at Claire, my sister, my maid of honor, the person I'd trusted with my secrets since we were kids. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she looked small, caught. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Ethan shifted beside me, his hand brushing mine, but I pulled away, my mind racing. Dad didn't stop. 2 years ago, he said, when Mia and Ethan were going through a rough patch, every couple has them, Claire saw an opportunity. She thought she could step in, turn Ethan's head, make him see her instead. She sent him messages, showed up at his apartment, told him Mia wasn't right for him, that she was. The room erupted in whispers, heads turning, eyes darting between Claire, Ethan, and me. My stomach churned. I looked at Ethan, my voice shaking. "Is this true?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a small nod, his eyes filled with guilt. My world tilted. Claire? My own sister? Dad's voice cut through the noise. "Ethan didn't take the bait," he said, his tone softening as he looked at me. "He told me about it, Mia. He came to me, confused, upset, not knowing how to handle it without tearing you two apart. He chose you. He's always chosen you." Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and fast. I looked at Ethan, and for the first time since Claire's toast, he met my eyes. "Mia," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." The crowd was buzzing now, some guests whispering furiously, others staring at Claire in disbelief. Susan's face was a storm cloud, her eyes locked on Claire like she was ready to pounce. My mom was crying silently, her hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. Dad raised a hand, silencing the room again. "Claire," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "you had your chance to be a sister today, to stand by Mia. Instead, you tried to tear her down, in front of everyone, on her wedding day." He shook his head, his eyes glistening. "That's not love, that's jealousy." Claire's face crumpled, her bravado gone. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The microphone trembled in Dad's hand as he turned to me, his voice softening. "Mia, you are Ethan's choice, his only choice, and if anyone here doubts that, they can leave." The room was silent again, but this time it felt different, like a weight had been lifted, even if the pain was still raw. I looked at Ethan, his eyes pleading, and then at Claire, who was staring at the floor, tears streaking her makeup. The truth was out, and it hurt like hell, but it was out. The silence in the barn stretched, heavy and raw, like the aftermath of a storm. My dad stood tall, the microphone still in his hand, his words hanging in the air like a verdict. Claire's face was a mess of tears and smudged mascara, her shoulders hunched as if she could shrink away from the weight of every stare. I felt like I was watching it all from outside my body, my sister, exposed, my husband, silent, my wedding, teetering on the edge of ruin. Ethan reached for my hand again, his touch tentative, like he wasn't sure I'd let him. I didn't pull away this time, but I didn't squeeze back either. My heart was a tangle of hurt and love, and I didn't know how to unravel it. The crowd was still buzzing, a low hum of shock and whispers, but it was my mom who broke the tension. She stood, her chair scraping softly, and walked to Claire. Without a word, she took her by the arm and led her out of the barn, the door swinging shut behind them. The room exhaled. Susan, Ethan's mom, was next to move. She stood, her face a mix of fury and embarrassment, and addressed the crowd. "I think we've had enough drama for one night," she said, her voice clipped but steady. "Let's raise a glass to Mia and Ethan, to love that endures." Her eyes flicked to me, and for the first time, I saw something like warmth in them. The guests hesitated, then lifted their glasses, a chorus of, "To Mia and Ethan," rippling through the room. It wasn't the joyful toast I'd imagined, but it was something. The band started playing again, a soft melody to ease the tension, and people began to shift, some heading to the dance floor, others whispering in small groups. I turned to Ethan, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "I didn't want to hurt you, Mia. It was a stupid moment, a mistake I shut down right away. Claire, she misread things. I told her I loved you, that it was always you. I thought it was over. He paused, his voice breaking. I should have told you. I'm so sorry. I wanted to be angry, to scream, to demand why he'd kept this from me. But looking into his eyes, I saw the truth. Guilt, yes, but also love. The same love that had carried us through years of challenges. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and let him pull me into a hug. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Later, I learned what happened outside the barn. My mom had taken Claire to the parking lot, her voice low but firm. You're my daughter, and I love you, she'd said, but what you did tonight was cruel. You need to make this right. Claire had sobbed, apologizing through tears, saying she didn't know why she'd done it, that she'd been jealous for so long, jealous of my happiness, my relationship, my day. Mom didn't let her off easy, but promised they'd talk more later. For now, Claire stayed outside, too ashamed to face the crowd again. Back inside, the reception continued, though the mood was different, quieter, more subdued. Lauren pulled me onto the dance floor, whispering, You're stronger than this, Mia. Don't let her steal your joy. Jake cracked jokes to lighten the mood, and even Susan joined us for a dance, her usual sharpness softened by the night's chaos. My dad stayed close, his presence like a lighthouse in a storm. When we danced, he whispered, You're my brave girl. Always have been. The night ended with Ethan and me cutting the cake, the crowd cheering as we fed each other, a small moment of normalcy in a night turned upside down. We didn't talk about Claire again, not then. But as we drove away from the venue, fairy lights fading in the rear view, I felt a strange mix of relief and resolve. Our marriage wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was ours, and we'd chosen it. Days later, Claire called. Her voice was small, broken. She apologized, said she'd been wrestling with her own insecurities, her own loneliness. I listened, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Ethan and I started therapy a week after the wedding, unpacking the secrets and rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. My parents, especially Dad, became our biggest supporters, reminding us that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. Looking back, that night was a turning point. It could have broken us, but instead it showed me what we were made of. Ethan's choice, Dad's courage, my own strength, it all came into focus under those barn rafters. Life isn't a fairy tale, but it's real, and that's enough. So, what do you think? Have you ever seen a family secret spill out like that? Or maybe you've got your own story of a wedding day twist? Drop it in the comments. I'm dying to hear. And if this story hit you in the feels, hit that subscribe button and join us for more. Let's keep sharing these moments that remind us what it means to be human.